Well, hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is the fourth and final in our series of Lutheran Service Builder training webinars. Today, the topic is My Worship Resources and Other Add-Ons. We've got a lot of great stuff to cover. As always, my name is Peter Frank. I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing Technology here at Concordia Publishing House. My email address is on the screen. You are welcome to reach out to me at any time. I am happy to be back presenting. This is a fun presentation. There is a lot of different things we're going to cover, so I won't spend too much time talking about me, but I will talk about Builder for just a quick second. If you are just tuning in, if this is the first webinar you're watching, we're going to be talking about Lutheran Service Builder, our web-based worship planning software that allows you to quickly and easily plan your services, export bulletins and presentations and playlists, which we'll be talking about today. Just a quick caveat. There are multiple versions of Lutheran Service Builder out there. There's version 1 that was released in 2006, version 2 that was released in 2008. We're going to be talking about the online version, which was released in 2018. So this is going to be only focused on that new online version. If you are not on that version and you'd like to get on there, just put a note in the chat. We'll put you in contact with somebody who can help you get started. All right, so again, 4 sessions of Builder training this week. First, we had service planning and global search. Then we had bulletins and bulletin formats. Then we had presentations and presentation formats. So those were the last 3 days. Today is Thursday. If you are watching the recording, it doesn't matter what day it is. But today we're talking about My Worship Resources and Other Add-Ons. So that's kind of the lay of the land. We are in that 4th and final session today. As always, a few housekeeping items, changed a little bit this time. Today I'm planning 90 minutes for presentation. I've been going over every time. I'll probably go over again because there's a lot on here, but that's what I'm planning for. If you can't stick around the whole time, don't worry, we will be recording this. So the last 30 minutes I'm going to leave for questions. We've had a lot of really good questions, a lot of good feedback. I've been sharing it with our development team. They're excited to get all these different ideas or hear of ideas we've had in the past and just knowing where it's at in people's minds and priorities. You are muted. If you are attending live, you are muted today. We've got a lot of people here. I can't have everybody live. We'll be talking over each other. So all attendees are muted. I will be the only one you're hearing today. So sorry you've got to put up with my voice for a couple hours, but I really enjoy being here presenting for you, and I'd love to hear what you're saying. But instead, I'm going to have to ask you that as you ask questions throughout, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And as I see here, we've got a number of people. There's at least one person without audio, but other people say they can hear me. So I'm assuming that it is on your end if you can't hear us. All right, so the last thing on here, like I mentioned, we're recording this. I will share the recording. The last 2 days I've had great success with it. Monday was a little rough. It took several hours for it to process, and I wasn't able to share it until Tuesday morning. So you will get the recording either later today or tomorrow at the latest, hopefully, as long as everything goes well. But I think it'll be today. I always make a few assumptions. They haven't really changed much. I'm assuming you understand Lutheran worship. I'm not going to get into the specifics about the different elements. I'm just going to show you how the software works. I'm assuming that you're subscribed to Builder and to the hymn license. You don't have to be, but I'm going to talk like you are. And I'm assuming you're using the online version of Lutheran Service Builder. You kind of have to be on this one. Otherwise, it's going to be really confusing. Finally, I am assuming that you attended the first 3 webinars in this series, or at least you watched them online, watched the recordings after the fact. There's going to be things that we're not covering today. We're going to go right past them. So this isn't a complete training. With the 4 webinars total, you'll get a complete training, but I don't want to repeat myself too much today. So if you're not using the online version, go start up for your free trial right now. You'll get full access to all these tools except for the exporting. So there's a lot of reasons why. I talk about that in session 1. So let's go ahead and hear about you. As always, we've got a number of poll questions. I'd love to find out who's here. So the first one is going to be about your role today. Well, not just today, your role every day. This helps me know who's here, and really this is just for planning. So please go ahead and select the option that best describes you. The reason I ask this question is that as I look at the results of who's here at which session, it helps me know who that audience is, how I can frame the context for you. And just like it has been, the majority of the people who are here are those administrator roles. We've got about 20% are pastors. Today, probably more than any other day, we have some other roles. So if you are in that other role, let me know what it is. And yeah, just like yesterday, the first 2 days were fine. We have several people who are saying that you can't click on the survey. I am so sorry for that. I don't know what that is, but I do need to reach out to our GoToWebinar support team. So I'll go ahead and close the voting. Sorry about that. In fact, because of that, I don't think I'm going to go with the next 2 questions, just because I don't want to waste your time if you can't vote. All right, so we won't worry about that too much, but I'm going to keep going. All right, so training goal for today. By the end of today, you will know how to create custom worship elements and import additional content into Lutheran Service Builder. There are a lot of different things you can do, and we're going to go over as many of those as possible. All right, the outline. We're going to talk about custom liturgies. I was going to talk about that on Tuesday, session 2, and I kind of ran out of time. I only covered it briefly. Covered it a little bit yesterday in presentations, but we're going to start there because there's a lot of questions about that. Then we're going to look at creating custom worship elements, saving them, editing them, creating them from scratch. We're going to go into Concordia Organist, which allows you to export a playlist. And we're going to look at creative worship. I've had some questions about what is creative worship. Well, it's not, it's a product that has been along way longer than Lutheran Service Builder. And it's not a requirement for Service Builder by any means, but there's a lot of cool stuff in it. So we'll take a look at that. And then we're going to talk about the Let Us Pray files, the prayer of the church. This is a free subscription. I hope everybody signs up for it, even if you don't use it every week. And then we'll talk about sharing elements. Once you have all of these new kind of creative elements, or you make some customizations, how can you share it with other people? We'll cover that. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to jump right in. This is our calendar screen. We're going to talk about custom liturgies first. So what I want to do is go back to our bulletin that we had on Monday. Well, we did the plan on Monday, we did the bulletin on Tuesday. So we'll go into the plan, we'll load the bulletin. There we go. Now you might notice my fonts are a little bit different. I played around with it some. I went with the same kind of font that we have for all of Lutheran Service Builder. It's called Laytone. It'll just make it a more consistent presentation. So we have our order of service. You'll notice right here at the very top, we've got the order of holy baptism, or the rite of holy baptism, pardon me. And what we can do is I'm going to turn off the content just so that it doesn't confuse you. This is an actual divine service. All right, next, if you want to make some changes. So we talked about things like, I think this one has the children's message in there. Yeah, there's that tract. I forgot to go look up what tract meant. If any of you out there know what tract is, let me know. That was a question, and that's something that I haven't covered yet. I'm just not familiar with it. So please let me know. I'll share it with everybody else later on in the Q&A. All right, so then hymn of the day. Do we have children's message? I thought we did, but that must be a different service. All right, well, we'll look at that in just a moment. We've made a number of changes to this already, but I want to show you first off how you save these changes. So we will go add children's message, just because that's an easy one that it's not part of the liturgy. It's easy to call out. So I'm going to go up here to insert. And I didn't cover this in great detail the other day, but this is where you can insert any kind of element into your service, and an element is just a component of your service. It could be a rubric, a heading, a caption, could be a whole nother hymn. Maybe you have 3 or 4 distribution hymns. Could be another reading, a prayer, a proper, or just some other worship element. And then finally, we also have the place for you to insert rights here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a caption right before the first reading. And I'm going to call this children's message. That's it. Just leave it right there. At the very least, I have changed the divine service enough to include that children's message. So now I have what you would call my custom order of service. This is just unique to me. We've created it right now. Other people may have it, but it's not this one right now. And I want to use this again and again. So I'm going to go here and click this save button. When I click save, it says save as custom order of service. And we had a question about this come up, and the question was, this is kind of confusing. When I go to save this, I get a duplicate every time. If I make another change, I get another version of this. You'll see what that looks like in a minute. But as we looked at it, we have to clarify. This is save as. So you're creating a copy of what is on the screen. You're not changing Divine Service Setting 1. And that's why we put this as my. So you can change anything. We're using Resurrection Lutheran Church as our fictional church. We could just call this Resurrection version. So Divine Service Setting 1, Resurrection version, save. And now you'll notice there's a little bit of a, you got the ellipses there just showing that it's got a different name on there, Resurrection version. I don't know if that even shows up. Yeah, it looks like the tooltip shows up. All right, so yeah, I see Wayne is posting that children's message is in the Easter 2 file. You are paying attention far better than I am. Thank you so much, Wayne. I went to the wrong one. That's okay, I've got it here now. So I've got this custom order of service. And what that means, first and foremost, let's go ahead and plan another service the following week. Oops, we'll go into May. My goodness, we're already getting into May. For as long as April has seen with our sheltering in place, it has also gone by very quickly. All right, so we're May 3rd, Easter holiday, fourth Sunday of Easter. We're gonna go ahead and plan this service. And I'm gonna go to my order of service where it says empty right now. And on the right-hand side, you can see there's all of our liturgies from the Lutheran Service book. We have daily office, other services. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see what's called My Orders of Service, and then it's uncategorized. We'll talk about categories in a few minutes. But the very first one is Divine Service Setting 1, Resurrection version. And I'm going to click on that, and we're just going to go straight into preparing the bulletin. Now, what you'll see here, oops, it doesn't look like it saved my default format. That's interesting. Yeah, there we go. So what you'll see here is that we've got our Holy Baptism right in there because that was part of our custom order of service. But as I go through, you'll notice that it has changed a little bit. The things that are the propers of the day have been updated, but my children's message is still there. So and let's go down, here's the hymns. So hymn of the day is still in place, but because I modified my sermon title, that is still in there too, which is not necessarily appropriate. That's not, we don't want to have the same sermon every Sunday. Of course we want law and gospel every Sunday, but we don't want the same sermon. So the things that are meant to be changed, those propers of the church, are changing in my custom order of service. But the things that I have customized, that I've overwritten, those stay the same regardless, because the sermon isn't a proper. The sermon is really just a caption, just like children's message. So that's something to be very cognizant of, that the changes that you make will carry through unless it's a proper. All right, so how do you update that? Well, that's really where you go up into My Worship Resources, and we've talked about it and referenced it over and over again. We're really going to dig into it today. So up under Settings, My Worship Resources, under My Liturgies, that's where we're going to go. So if you're following along at home, again, that's Settings, My Worship Resources, My Liturgies. Now, if you go over here to Documents, unlike your bulletin formats, you can't go and edit them. And as I was talking with our developers, it makes sense that is confusing to people. That's why we've had so many questions. So we're going to be reviewing that. We meet on a weekly basis every Friday, and our whole team meets to talk about just what we've heard from customers during the week. I'm going to be bringing this up tomorrow. All right, so we're going to go My Worship Resources, My Liturgies, and we're going to get in a very different view. So this is The things I'm going to start off with are similar across all of the different types of my worship resources. Each view is not exactly the same. So I want to just put that out there right from the beginning. So if you look here under the dropdown, you've got prayers, hymns, common elements, liturgies, which is where we're at, copyright holders, psalm tones, templates, and tunes. We're not going to go into great detail on all of those, but we are going to dig into some of the core ones. So we're under my liturgies, and you've got the ability to filter. You've got the ability to add a liturgy right here or add a category. Our expectation is that you are probably going to use this quite a bit. Unless you are continually going straight from Lutheran Service Book and using the Divine Service as is, you'll probably have many different liturgies that you'd want to reuse. Or maybe you'll have some where you're not necessarily reusing them, but you want to save them in case you reuse them later on. There's a lot of different strategies for how you do this. I know many churches who kind of cycle through the different Divine Service settings will create a version for each one of those settings, and that has the same kind of modifications. I know others who only use about 2 of the Divine Service settings, but sometimes they have communion, sometimes they don't. It's on a pretty regular schedule, so they know which one they're using. So you might have those kind of versions. Now we've created this whole categorization system, so it's whatever you want it to be. So I should walk you through how I do that. Let me go back a second. What you'll do is you'll go down to the blue button and click Add and say Add a Category. And that category will show up at the top. And you can decide how you want to name it. It's really just a folder system. So if we type in here, and I'm doing things, I'm not describing them. I really need to describe them first. You see, it's created this new category. If I double click it, now I can rename it. And I can say something like communion services. Or if I want to do both, I'll just go in and put non-communion services. Oops. I should probably spell it correctly. There we go. Or maybe I have a bunch of Divine Service setting 1 variations, that's the word. So DS1, something like that, Divine Service setting 1. However you want to do it, that is up to you. It's your organizational system. And then what you can do is you can just drag and drop them into those different categories. So however you choose to categorize, that's just fine. And if you don't categorize, then by default, it just all goes under uncategorized. But this lets you have some order. And then of course you can always filter down. And so if you start searching for DS1, you can find them. Now, that is going to be similar in some of these things. So like if I go over to my common elements, I've got that same kind of system there. Add a category, add common element. But if I go over to my tunes, you don't have that. We're not expecting you to add a bunch of tunes. And in fact, you can see I only have 1. There's really only 2 values with the tune. You've got the name and the meter. So just know that it's not going to be the same for each one of these, but for the major ones, you'll have that categorization ability. All right, so back to my liturgies. Let's see what it looks like. So here is our Divine Service setting 1 Reformation version. Sorry, Resurrection version. So what I have here is kind of an outline view of this service. And where we have option groups, I have the default value. Now, if you remember from session 2, we had those blue lines and we drop it down and pick one. Well, whatever you picked before you save that order of service is what will show up here. So you can see I've got the psalm there, and this is the feast, the gradual down here, the alleluia and verse. So all of those selections that I have stayed with it. And then if you go back here, right before the reading, there's the children's message. It's just a caption, that's all it is, but it's showing up there. And then of course we had the rite of holy baptism right at the beginning. So let's kind of walk through these. Let's start with confession and absolution. So on the right-hand side, this is a liturgical element. We've got the name of the, as we click on this, we have right up at the top, liturgy. We've got the name of the liturgy. That won't change regardless of what I'm clicking on. But underneath it, you've got the liturgy element. So in this case, it's confession and absolution. The first thing is the default caption. And so if you always call it confession ampersand absolution, you can put it that way and it'll always be part of your format. So always be part of your liturgy. Think of it like bulletin formats, where this will be the default for this order of service, and then you can override it from there. But we're setting defaults here. Some of the other things like hide the caption, override default subcaption, page number, you can just put the page number in. Maybe you're referring, maybe you're using TLH for the Lutheran hymnal, the red one. Maybe you're referencing this and you're creating an order of service straight out of TLH. You can have labels in there in terms of how it's being used in the service, but topics, scripture, all of that is for your search. So we did a lot of searching with hymns, not so much other elements, but you can do that. You can say when it's removed. You can even say remove this without asking. Well, we don't want to remove confession and absolution, but the Alleluia in verse, that might be something that we do remove during certain seasons. Whoops, clicking too far. Let me go back a second. So keep that in mind as you're going through here, is that you have these different elements that are available. Now let's drop down to that Alleluia in verse. So when I click on this one, because there is that content showing, then I can go in and see what it looks like. I can even click through them and see the other ones. So if I go back to Alleluia in verse, this is removed during Lent. And the scripture is John 6:68. So there's a number of things. We also have down here our first example of copyright information. So this is how you modify things that are already in place. So like here's the sermon after Easter. I can remove that from here and say, it says override default subcaption. Well, no, I don't want it to override the default subcaption. So now it is labeled just sermon and no subcaption. I never remove it. And I should also highlight real quick, you want to save your changes on this. It's easy. There's a lot of things that are auto-saved. Like when you're going through your bulletin, you're making those changes, it saves it right then and there. But in my liturgies, you're kind of staging this out. And so we don't auto-save everything. What we do is over on the far left-hand side next to that service or any of these elements as you're going through my worship resources, we put a little blue dot on there to say there's unsaved changes. Now, as you'll notice as I'm switching back and forth, I've noticed that it is a little slow to remove that blue dot. Now it's gone. There we go. So just keep an eye on that. That's another thing I'm going to bring up. It works, it saves it, but the blue dot has a little bit of a delay. And that's just how it refreshes with the server when it tells it, but we might be able to optimize that. All right, so as you're going through here, you might remember that the other day we talked about different rubrics that you don't necessarily need every time. So as we go down, I think we already removed a number of these. Yeah, we kind of did. Here's a rubric that I don't know if we'd necessarily want to remove, but here, the passing of the peace, greeting one another in the name of the Lord, saying peace be with you. It's a good thing to include. At my church, we don't do it after the prayer of the church. We do it right at the beginning. So if I wanted to, I could drag it up to the top. And you kind of just click and hold, move it up to the very top and let the screen drag with you and put it right there. So you can move these elements as part of your service. What's nice about this is that you're not seeing the full text of everything like you are in the bulletin view. You can still move things in the bulletin view and then save your order of service. But if you're doing it from here, you have less area to cover because you're only showing the individual elements. You also have the ability to insert an element just like before. In fact, you can even create your own option groups, your whole grouping of things too. So like if we wanted to, my church is Salem Lutheran Church and School. We do the ringing of the Salem bells when we greet each other in the name of the Lord. And so if I wanted to insert a caption, put it up at the top, I would say ringing of the Salem bells. And then instead of following the prayers, I would say, as we ring the Salem bells, we invite you to greet one another in the name of the Lord. So now I've updated my rubric to be appropriate with what we do at our church. All right, so one other thing I should call out. Your styling, this confused me just a second ago. Your styling is going to be different because this is the default styling. So you'll notice what threw me off for a second is ringing of the Salem bells as a caption. It should be bold. Well, we don't have anything but captions here other than the headers. So the headers are bold, but the captions are there. The captions will show up just like we have it in our service or in our bulletin format. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the rite of holy baptism. Oh, it's a little slow. Let me go ahead and then I also accidentally deleted my rubric. The nice thing is if you do delete these things, like I just did, you hit reset, it'll go back to your last save version. Now, of course, I didn't save it recently, so a few of those things are not there. But that's okay. When I make a mistake during a presentation, I see it as a teaching moment for all of you because I know that we get questions like that too. So we'll just go back real quick, add that in here, put my caption, ringing of the Salem bells. I'll put in here, as we ring the Salem bells, we invite you to greet one another. And then we will remove that right. I mentioned this several times. It throws me off when I'm presenting and streaming my screen. Everything is a little bit slow. And so that's hopefully not what you're experiencing as you're going through this. Our intention is that it's very quick, but when I'm streaming, everything gets slowed down. All right, so now that I got everything back in place, I'm going to click save. All right, were there any other things that I automatically, oh, here's a rite that we don't need. So I'm going to delete that. Thankfully, we are not bidding farewell and Godspeed to our Lutheran teachers every week. We don't need that. All right, and then there's some things that were replaced by our baptismal rite. So like the opening hymn. If I wanted to add a hymn in there, we can click Insert Hymn, and then we just put it right there. Actually, it would probably go right after that heading. All right, I'm going to hit save. What I want to do, because we've got a lot to cover, is I'm going to close this. We'll give it a second to close. I'm going to go back to my service plan. I'm just going to delete this service. All right, we're going to start again. And I want to show what it looks like now that we've made those changes. So we're on Easter, the fourth Sunday of Easter. Plan the service. I'm going to go under orders of service. And now you can see down here on the bottom, I have my orders of service and I have DS1. I don't have any communion or non-communion services. Those are categories, but they're empty categories right now. So they don't show up here. But there's my divine service setting 1, resurrection version. I will click on this. It is selected. Now I go and click prepare bulletin. Now let's see how it looks. All right, so I have ringing of the Salem bells and I have my rubric in place. I have service of the word still, but there's my new hymn. Let's go down and take a look at sermon. Haha, there's the sermon without the subcaption, without the changed caption itself. So you see, it's much more like I would like it to be. It's different than out of the box, but it fits with what I'm looking for. And then when I put it under my format, there we go. It's looking pretty good. All right, so that is how you do custom liturgies. Let me jump over into presentation view for just a second. I touched on this yesterday. if you are doing a bulletin and a presentation, I recommend doing the bulletin first and then the presentation. You don't have to do that, but I find the bulletin view to be a little bit easier to manage than the presentation view. But if you're doing a custom order of service, you're already doing a lot of that work beforehand. It doesn't matter as much. I'd still recommend doing it because it's easier to assign things. But if you go and look at prepare a presentation, you can see that it is the same thing here. And so all of our changes are already in place. So it works either way. Hopefully you could figure that out on your own, but I wanted to clarify that our custom order service is the same regardless. And you can see that here as you make changes to it. It's and you can save as a new order of service. But this is really the basis of everything. What you have here under My Liturgies is that starting point for both kinds of exports, the bulletin or the presentation. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to take a second to look and see if there's any questions I'm missing, because I'm going to move on to something different next. All right. Well, Tony is letting me know that tract is a Lenten substitution for the Alleluia verse. Thank you very much. I don't know the details of that, so I'm still curious, but can you cover how to insert multiple distribution hymns? I've had issues like that. Patricia's asking. I'll show that in just a second. Here's Stephen saying, tract, noun, 3, often capitalized definition of tract, verses of scripture as from Psalms, used between the gradual and the gospel at some masses, as during penitential seasons. Thank you very much, Stephen. That is much more helpful. All right, very good. What do options can be standalone and can be inserted do? Well, that is another good question. Patricia, you are on the mark today. Let me go in and answer those first two. So I'm going to go back here to my Resurrection Divine Service setting 1. First off, when you are doing distribution hymns, there's 2 down here. If I wanted to add another distribution hymn, I click Insert Hymn and I go down there and it puts hymn. But then what I can do is I can put my caption in and just call it another distribution hymn. Save that. All you're doing is creating a placeholder for that. So I'm wondering if there's more going on into some of the issues you've had in the past, that they don't act like hymns after inserted. And you say you don't get the same menu options as before. If I click on a distribution hymn, it's really just a placeholder for a hymn. What may have happened for you is you inserted a caption instead of a hymn. And that's something to keep in mind. They all have different aspects to them. And so I would guess that's what happened. I can't say for sure, but adding another distribution hymn is just as simple as inserting a hymn. All right, now with the liturgy, can be standalone or can be inserted. Think of that as the difference between an order of service and a rite. So a rite is essentially an order of service in and of itself, but some rites just can't be standalone. And so you don't want that presented as an option for an order of service. And so like a divine service, yeah, absolutely, that can stand alone. But if you are doing, farewell and Godspeed to a Lutheran teacher, well, that's really within the context of a divine service. So that's what that means, can be inserted or can stand alone. All right. Let's see. We're going to get into the L's and P's in a little bit. Can you add a hymn that will be added every week? Example, instead of the hymn of praise or Gloria Excelsi, we use O Come, O Come, Emmanuel during Advent. No, you can't add a specific hymn each week, but you can add a suggestion for the hymns right there. And so, let's see, O Come, Emmanuel. And we can put that in there. That's a good question. I'm curious how that'll work. Close that out. First distribution hymn, kind of a unique distribution hymn there. As I go in and look at the Oh yeah, I have to reset my order of service. Yeah, I want to get these now while we're in context, and then I'll move on to the next thing. Ooh, that's going a little slow. I forgot how slow it is when I'm streaming and I'm looking at a presentation. So we'll look at that one and then we'll move forward. Let's go back into our bulletin. That goes a little bit smoother. The presentation view takes longer because, again, like I described yesterday, it is automatically splitting up everything. All right, we will load this service. Although this isn't going super fast either. We'll give that another second. Wow, that is taking longer. All right, well, there we go. We'll go down here. I think that'll just show up simply as a suggestion. Oh, there you go. It puts it under the caption there. So that does answer you can still switch it, but it is recommending that's the one that is used. So that's good. That's very helpful. So I hope that answers that question. That was from Dawn. And then as we look at the other distribution hymns, I see what you're saying there. Well, I think maybe once you select that hymn, yeah, that seems to be doing it just fine. So Patricia, it's working okay for me with that distribution hymn right there. All right, let's go ahead and move on. The next thing is we want to change elements within it. And this goes into some of the questions about the icons and everything else. So let me go up here to a psalm. I want to start, a responsorial is something we get quite a bit. So we're going to go to a psalm, Psalm 23. That's a very good one for today. Now, I mentioned before, you can edit the caption, you can edit the subcaption, you can't edit the content. Actually, you can. You can't edit that specific content within the context of your bulletin like you can with caption and subcaption. But if you right click, you have an edit button here. You also have an edit button up at the top in your navigation or in your ribbon. They do the same thing. But when you edit this, what is happening is it is creating a new common element, a new worship element. It takes you right here into my worship resources, right into common elements, and it puts the content on your screen. You're not going to override what was already in place from the out-of-the-box divine service settings. You're going to get a brand new clone or copy of that element. And this is where you have this editing tool. And there's a lot that can go into this editing tool. I can't show an example for everything. But here is Psalm 23. And if you want to make this a responsorial, well, let me take a look at the tools first. You can see here that this is in poetry format right now. If you switch it to paragraph, it takes it and moves that over and basically just removes the margin. If you like scripture heading right there, if this was part of the paragraph, it changed the style of that. That's all we're looking at right now is just the style. And the acrostics, I'm trying to remember what that is. I think that's within the psalm. There's so much in here that's complex. But yeah, it changes. This is essentially just for the styling. And so if you want to make that bold, you can make it bold, italicize, a verse number, divine name. So here's the Lord. If you take it, you undo it, then it's just lower or the regular casing of Norn. So now we're Yahweh. You can insert make the words of Christ red, insert a cross. There's your chant pipe, and then your chant asterisk. But if we're looking at it from a responsorial perspective, we can go here and enter which one we want. Now, before I go too far, I want to clarify something, because as I was testing this, I ran into the issue, and I'll show you the issue. If you select, let's say we're doing whole verse by whole verse. If I go here, I select verse 1, and I click, this should be the pastor. It actually selects all of that, which is not what I want. I'm going to click undo. The reason is that the way this psalm and many others are set up is that you have paragraph breaks and line breaks. it's looking for the responsorial for the paragraph breaks. So all you have to do is go to the end, click the delete button, and then enter. And now that makes it a paragraph break, as opposed to if you delete it and hit shift enter, that's a line break. So this is common word processor functionality, but it's not necessarily well known. So I wanted to clarify that for you. If we're doing whole verse by whole verse, first go in, do your paragraph breaks. Now you can go here. You don't even have to do a whole select and say that's pastor, that's congregation, that's pastor, that's congregation, that's pastor, that's congregation. If you, let's see, yeah, we don't have any additional line breaks. I ran into that some before, but it's looking okay. So now I have this custom responsorial of the psalm, and I can do some other things if I wanted to it. I'm not going to do any of that today. These are very familiar things to what you saw before, except we don't have that liturgy section at the top. You also can add things in here. So if you wanted to add a musical version of that, we're going to get into that in the hymns, but I wanted to highlight that up here at Add. So I've made a responsive psalm. I'm going to click Save. I've now saved that. In fact, I can go over here and change my name by double clicking it. I can also go in here and say responsive. Now that doesn't, you'll see right in here, it says name, how it appears in search results, caption, how it appears in bulletins, just to help clarify. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that. I'm gonna close out of this. And now there is my responsive psalm, just like I designed it. Now, common question we're getting, and this is what came up just a few minutes ago, is, well, it's not the pastor who's doing it. It's our vicar or our liturgist or a lector. How can I change the letter? Well, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is you can change the letter. Bad news is you can't change the letter to everything. So we're going to go back to edit. And you probably saw this when I was clicking on it, but I wanted to do this in 2 steps. So if I click on that section, it says pastor right now. As you look in here, you have options. You don't have unlimited options, but we'll get to how you can make your own. So maybe it's the assistant. There's the A for assistant. You also have an A for cantor or an A for lector. Well, really the A means assistant. But if you remember, in bulletin formats, you can say, don't put the icon or don't put the symbol, put the full word. That's what we're doing here. Now, if you've got something that is not what you want, so like here, C is for people. That's not good from Sesame Street time frame. That'll confuse all your kids. C is for cookie, not for people. You have C is for congregation up here. You can add a custom one if you wanted to, but you only have a limited number of symbols. So just to remember that these are all images. We've had to create these. They're actually images that are fed into a font, the LSB font. And this is something from LSB2 that you're probably almost all familiar with. If you're exporting something with the symbols or any other symbols in there, it's going to ask you to install that font in your computer. I didn't go over that before. I probably should have. So if there's questions about that, our support team handles them really well, but I could also answer them during the Q&A time. But you can add a custom responsorial. So we've got a vicar at our church. There's a V. If we wanted to say vicar, add that in. Now we have vicar and congregation. So this is how you do it. If there's something you don't want, or that you want, that is not in there. So like we've got left side or right side, men, women. I can't guarantee that we can quickly and easily add these because these are all images. They need a designer to get in there, export the right thing. But I'd be curious what we're missing. And so if there is a symbol that you would like, go ahead and let us know about it. It's not a quick fix. It's not something we can do immediately, but it would help us know what we're missing. So go ahead and let us know, but that's how you do it. So the good news is that you can do it. The bad news is that you can't do anything you want. The other bad news is that if it's not already in there, you are going to have to make a custom resource for that. So once you make that resource, it's going to be there. You can use it again and again, but it's not a quick fix of saying, well, switch all the P's to L's. Now you're going to have to go in there and do it yourself. So let's go back. I didn't save that. My changes will be there unsaved right now. I should have done that. But what I want to do is go into something that is already responsive. So here's the Kyrie. So that is for the assistant. If I want to edit it to be pastor, I'll click edit. We'll give it a second. There we go. I can go in here and say, switch these to pastor. Now, this pulled up, because this was not a proper, I should clarify this slowly. If we went to the psalm went to a common element because that common element is part of the propers. It was a psalm for that day in the church year. The Kyrie is part of this order of service, part of this custom order of service. You'll see here that here we are in my liturgies, not my common elements. So now I'm editing that order of service specifically here. So there's my Kyrie. I switched it to be pastor. If I wanted to, I could put a different name for it. Kyrie responsive. That is just responsive. It'll put it in there. That's just how it appears in bulletins though, not in search results. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click save. And we'll go back out. Give it just a second. And now it's changed from A's to P's. So this can then be used. You'll notice here, I've got Kyrie. I can pull Kyrie from Divine Service setting 1, it switches back to A, but now this Kyrie is available for Divine Service setting 1 resurrection version. So even if I'm using Divine Service setting 4 and I go into the Kyrie, I could pull this one in, but it is essentially owned by this liturgy, just like all of the other versions are owned by the liturgies in the service book. So I told you at the beginning, this is more advanced stuff. This is, we're all over the map. There's a lot of interconnections, but it's not an easy flow. So I hope you're following. If you have questions, this is really powerful stuff. You can do basically all the customizations you need. But I know it can be a little bit confusing. Let me see. Before I jump into hymns, that's the next thing. And that's a lot of fun. I want to check my questions. All right, musical notes on custom one. I wish you had D for deacon. That is good to know. Trinity, thank you very much. All right, can we include the Gloria be to the Father at the end of the Psalms? All right, yes. Tan is ahead of me. He's talking about the custom templates. We'll get there in just a moment. All right. Right side, left side would be great. Also for canonical song. We do have right side, left side, but we have the 1 and 2 as the symbols. All right, well, I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, looks like this is making sense for people. So next we're gonna go and do a hymn, a custom hymn. So I'm gonna go back to my worship resources. And I like doing a hymn first because it shows you how the music editing works. It is not a simple process. Well, I should say, it's fairly simple. It is not simple under the hood. So let me walk you through this. First off, I have here, and this is in my notes, but I'll pull this up so that you can see kind of what I'm looking at. All right, I have here a custom hymn. This was written by CPH's own Lisa Clark. I also have the music for this hymn. Hopefully you can still see this. Yeah, it's kind of small, don't worry. So this was actually a hymn that was written or commissioned for the 100th anniversary of Hope Lutheran Church here in St. Louis. And it is also a custom tune written by Kevin Hildebrand called Neosho. Neosho is the street that hope is on. So this is all custom. It's a very nice hymn. It was from 2017. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this into Lutheran Service Book. Now, this has got different rights. This is not allowed to be used with the hymn license. Just like many other Christian hymns and songs that are out there, they aren't covered under the hymn license, but you might have another license that covers them. So this will be very common. You might not always have the music. I get that question. Well, how do I get the music? Well, I don't know. There's a variety of ways you could get the music. For me, I went and asked our music team if I could have the image of that. That doesn't always happen. And if you are doing that, like if you want something from CPH, you can talk to our copyrights team and get that worked out first. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's going to be different for every hymn, so I can't tell you necessarily where to go to get it. But at least for this, I've got some coworkers who are very helpful. All right, so we're going to put that on one side. We're going to put this on the other side, and then I'm going to go back into Builder. Here's my hymns. It's one of those drop downs under my worship resources. There's my liturgy, my hymns. I'm going to click Add a Hymn. And now it says New Hymn. It automatically allows me to type in the name. There's a couple ways I can type in the name. I can type it in here on the left-hand side, as stone on living stone is set. I could have typed it in over here too on the right-hand side. Then underneath it says, well, what hymn number it is? Well, there's not a hymn number. I don't have to put anything in there. Do I want to put a label on it? Well, no, it's just a hymn. It's not used for any other part of worship. Is it a different version of an existing hymn? This will help with your usage. So maybe you've got a Thy Strong Word with a completely different setting of the tune that you want to bring in. You could use that so that you tie it back to Thy Strong Word, and you always know when the last time you used Thy Strong Word was. It's not seen as a completely independent hymn. You can also put topics and scripture in there so it can be found in search results. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. What I want to do is I want to add my text in. So as stone on living stone is set, I'm going to copy the text here, click my first stanza and paste. Now, typically it seems to add a line break in there. I don't need that, so I'm going to back up. So I just go through it and I add another one. Now, if you're typing this all in by hand, it's going to take a little bit longer than what you see me doing right here. But hopefully you're not having to do that. All right. So you'll notice at the top, this tab says text. And if I go to the lower right-hand side, it also says text here. Now, I know that the author is Lisa Clark, and she goes by Lisa M. Clark. So I'm going to put that the text was written by Lisa Clark, and I'm going to save it. So now she is in there as the author. I also know from here that this is copyright 2017 Concordia Publishing House. So I'm going to add a copyright. It's 2017. And I'm going to look at my copyright list, and you can bet that Concordia Publishing House is on there. Now, you also have administrated by. So for example, if it's a Stephen Starkey hymn, that would be copyright whatever year Stephen Starkey, but administered by CPH, because we administer all of his hymns. You could also say other text in there if there's other notes that you want to add on there. So like here, all rights reserved, reproduced by permission. You could put that in there if that is truly appropriate. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that. If there's a secondary copyright, you can add another copyright in there. Now, you also have the ability to put in what's called metadata. I use my air quotes just so you see some hand movement. You could put metadata in here for each stanza. And so if you wanted to call it a different name, so like here, all choir, all. So we could go in here and say all, actually no, that's what it's called, but if I wanted to say all and then put choir, you could put that in here. What I would recommend doing is leaving the numbers in there using other notes, but you've got some different options. And then you can say if it's refrain, if it's doxological. or if it's selected by default. Well, we're going to keep those all selected by default. There's no refrains, and there's no doxological ones. So I'm going to save this, and now I have it where I can put the text of the hymn into my service. What if you want to put the melody? Well, that's where you go up here to this tab and you click Add. And I mentioned this briefly before, but I'm going to show it to you in detail now. You have text and melody, and then you also have the ability to bring in a setting. So if you're doing 4-part, you can do it with that. Now, I will caution you that settings are a little bit complicated when it comes to full hymns, and I'll explain why when I get into the melody. It can be done. It's not the easiest. I would recommend maybe not doing that quite yet. We're talking about how to improve the process, but it's within the realm of possibilities, and I'll show you in just a moment a hymn that has that. So we're going to go into melody with stanzas. All right, so there it is. It's just a blank slate. It says replace engraving. What it really means is add engraving. So this takes you into the prepare music engraving mode, and there's a lot of things that are going on in the background here. This is such a powerful tool. All right, if you are scanning music, set the DPI to 300 or more. This will ensure that the music will print clearly and crisply in the bulletin. If your scanner software gives you the option, select black and white for color depth. The setting may be worded differently. The goal is to scan the engraving with a 2-color palette, 1 bit per pixel. Basically, that's just saying go black and white, go as simple as possible with the highest resolution, just for quality. So I'm going to click upload, and oops, we're going to go to my desktop, and there it is. So I'm going to upload the image, and pretty much any image will work. TIFFs are good, JPEGs are good, PNGs are good, those different image formats. GIF is probably not your best option, only because it's not the highest quality. Bitmap won't work because it's not a web compatible image type. All right, so first off, enter the width. Well, what is your standard bulletin size? I think everything in here, what was that? Is it, I think it's 5.5. So 8.5 by 11, yeah, 5.5, that's probably good. And then this threshold tells you, maybe I'll go up a little bit just to get to that 300. We'll do, yeah, it doesn't have to be 300 DPI. Yeah, I'm gonna do 5.5. And then the threshold changes just where that black and white comes into play. So as you adjust it, I don't know if you can see the slight differences as I'm streaming, but it adjusts it some. All right, so that looks good to me. I'm gonna click next. All right, now adjust the edges around the music so there's as little space as possible. While all of this is nice, and if we were printing just this to put in the bulletin, we'd want to include that. It means nothing for us as we are doing a custom hymn. So what I want to do is I want to drag this red line down just so that it's by the music. And what's nice is that it has this little snap to it. You see, what this is doing horizontal scanning, and it is looking for those black pixels and telling it where to stop. So if it goes across the entire page, it's going to say, all right, well, all of this is white space. I don't need that white space. I'll snap to the first time where I come across a black pixel in that area. This allows you to get a nice tight cropping. That's what we're going to do here too. The copyright stuff will print out separately. So we'll bring this in. So we're just looking at this square box. Now, I mentioned before, there's some difficulty with the 4-part settings. That's because there's 2 lines of music for each grouping, and there's usually a black line that goes across it. And so it doesn't know how to split it. But as we engrave music, we're very careful to include some white spacing, because then on the next slide, it takes my music and it slices it automatically. So you see all of these different lines. It is finding those gaps and saying, all right, this is a new grouping, this is a new grouping. And as long as it is engraved well, it works out quite well. Look at this, this is perfect. Every single thing is divided up. Now, if it's not divided up perfectly, then you get a chance to update it. And so if you wanted to drag and drop it, you can. you see there, as soon as you start moving things around, you've got some options there. And it's still gonna try to fit it as best as possible, but you can split it, you can merge with the one up above it. So you have some options for managing it. But if the engraving is correct, you've got those white lines all the way across, it'll do it pretty smoothly for you. All right, now I'll click next. Now it says identify the slices. It's just trying to piece it all together. And it assumes, and in many cases assumes correctly. It doesn't always do it, so you want to test it. So there's music, there's stanza 1, there's stanza 2, there's stanza 3, 4, 5, perfect. This is, obviously I use this example because it goes so smoothly, but it depends on your engraving. So if it's coming from us, from CPH, we have an idea that it might be going in a builder, we engrave it in this way. So I'm gonna go ahead and click finish. It's gonna save it all, and there we go. It is all in there, ready to go. Now, because we have here the melody that's showing, we've got some other things that we need to do. This is the hymn settings, just like before on the text. It's gonna be the same no matter what. But if we click back and forth between the text, you'll see down here, you've got this melody. Now, this line melody goes to this tab melody, which will show up under your ribbon later on. But we can say it inherits it from the text. The name, it comes from the text. I forget exactly what that is now. I always have questions about that. I talk to our developers. Oh, I know what it is. If it's if you have more than 5 stanzas and it is displaying it, you're not gonna, let's say you have an 8 stanza hymn, and we never allow you to show more than 5 stanzas engraved because it is confusing when you have a big block of stanzas. So if you have 8 stanzas that are engraved, you can do 8 stanzas that are engraved here, but it'll only show 5 engraved and it'll pull the others from the text. If you're going melody and you don't select this option, then it won't know what to do with stanzas 6, 7, or 8. So that's what that's from. And then the tune, oops, there we go. My screen is freezing on me. Let's try this again. Wow, that's going slow. I apologize. There we go. The tune, if you remember, is Neosho. I've already had that in here, but I can add Neosho as well. So we'll just put Neosho. I don't know what the key is, doesn't matter. That's just for search. I don't have a sample, but I do know that the author is Kevin Hildebrand. And I'll save that. And then copyrights, once again, 2017 Concordia Publishing House. And actually, I forgot about this. You can just add it from other texts. I'll just click add. There it is. Oops. Apparently I've got both now. All right. So that's saved. Uh-oh, not all copy contents include copyright information. I don't remember why that is. I usually know that. I think I might have done something weird with one of the stanzas. I'm not going to worry about that too much now. It'll let me know. And that's the great thing, is that if you have copyright stuff, it'll let you know moving forward. So I'll save that. Save the melody. Yeah, I wonder why that is. I'm going to have to look into that one. All right, we're going to close out of this. Hopefully that doesn't ruin the next part of it for me. What did I do wrong? I don't know. Let's go and add this hymn up at the top. Here's a hymn. And we'll search for As Stone. Yeah, usually that error comes across. All right, well, why is that? A stone on living stone. All right, well, I did something wrong. That saving is part of my problem, I think. Maybe because you had a different author at the top, that could be. I've gone through this demo so many times of this hymn, you'd think I'd have it down now. Yeah, see, it's still showing that blue thing right there. Melody, text, add author, copyrights. Let's go ahead, save that. It may also need to have an admin. Typically that shouldn't be. That's if it's different from something else. I'm wondering if it was from my author. Cancel, delete that. Because usually I can, I thought I was able to find authors, Hildebrand. I don't think I'm spelling that right either. Hildebrand. Yeah, see, now that's working. I don't know what I did. All right, and let me make sure from a search perspective. Yeah, I shouldn't have to type in him. Well, that was goofy. All right, we're gonna go ahead and save that. It is under him. I click here. Again, like I said before, if there's a mistake that I made, it's a good learning experience for all of you, and it's just embarrassing for me while I'm streaming live. All right, let's go here. As stone, oops, there it is. I wonder if, yeah, it was the saving. I don't know what exactly I did, but maybe resetting the copyrights worked, so thank you for that suggestion. Now, I click on it, and remember, my bulletin format is set to just show that in the caption right now, not display everything. But if I click on text, now it is showing all of the text. I can modify the stanzas. And if I click on melody, now it's showing there. And what's really cool is because it parsed the stanzas, I can take out certain stanzas. And we just have 1, 3, and 5. Now, here's the other thing. Yeah, it's got that text and tune, permission not attained. I think there's a way to combine that. I'll have to talk with our team about that. I'll have to talk with them again. They told me there's a way to combine it, and I forgot. I think I did that in the wrong order. But either way, it says permissions not obtained. And this is important for all of you as you're adding hymns from other sources. If I go here to document and I go to export and I say docx, it says here, these following resources are copyrighted. I do not have permission to use this resource, or this resource is covered under the following license. See, it's showing it twice. One's for the text, one's for the tune, and that's where I think I messed up. But just because it said this doesn't mean I can't use it if I truly, legally have right to use this. And this is where those other licenses come in. If you remember back to session 1, underneath general settings, you can add external licenses such as CCLI or one license or any other number of them that would give you the permission to use this hymn. And so if, for example, I was doing it from CCLI, I could select that. Or I could say enter new license. And I could put in my new license number. And so like if I called up CPH and said, can I have permission to use this? And I'd say, yes, that'll be $10 or whatever it is. Then I can say Concordia, or I'll just say CPH, and then license number, one-time usage. I can put in my account number, something like that. Add that in, and now I'm just saying I do have the legal right to use it. And then I click continue, and then move forward. So that's how you use external licenses for external content that you bring in here. And if you'll notice down here, it says used by permission CPH number one-time usage. Or I probably should have clarified that, CPH one-time usage number that. But now I can go back, export my document just fine. So we've added a custom hymn. That took longer than I planned. I apologize, but I hope that was helpful. What that does is show you how to use our music parser. Now, if you're using some other different elements, I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but we'll go back to my common elements. There's my responsive psalm, which I never did save. There we go. I could add a melody version of that and insert music in there. Where was the, there it is, insert engraving. And I can upload an engraving using that same tool. Now in this case, I might be uploading an engraving that is not stanzas, that is not split apart. It works differently that way. So I'm not going to go through all that because I showed you the more difficult one, but you can build your own and put it within text, and it's just that different version of it. So I hope that makes sense. All right, I'm going to try to get back on track here because I have covered a lot, but there's still a lot to go. So let me make sure I'm going to the right thing. The next thing, custom templates. This is a powerful one and is a brand new feature in the online version. So somebody mentioned the Gloria Patri before. If I wanted to go in and add the Gloria Patri here, edit caption, I'm going to right click and do edit. It should take me into my worship resources. All right, what I could do, let me click out and get in it. I could go in and type it right here at the very bottom, and I can click enter, add that in if I wanted to. But I could also go under my templates and create a custom template. If you'll remember, I should show you. It's a little slow. I hate jumping back and forth when I'm streaming, but I think this is probably the better way to show you. If I selected like here, a reading. So the psalm is a little bit different, but if I wanted the reading in there, or like in this case, this psalm has the template because of where it's being used. And here I have these templates, and this is where I showed you that you could say something like daily office response, oh Lord, have mercy on us, thanks be to God, put that at the very bottom. But you could also add a template, and I might even have it, nope, for the Gloria Patri or any other thing. So if you go under my worship resources, my templates, what this is it's the ability to go in here, put text, and say something like, glory be to the Father, and say, well, that's coming from the congregation. Oops. Here, let me go back. Oh, I've already got it in the responsorial. Let me take it out of the responsorial first. Then I'll put it up here. And you're basically adding placeholder text. So like if we go here to custom gospel, I've got hashtag content, hashtag. So what I would do, hashtag content, hashtag, then make this one the responsorial. Glory be to the Father, and save that way. I know I'm not typing all of that in. Let's just call that Gloria Patri. So if I save that, hashtag content, hashtag, and then put glory be to the Father, this is saying that whatever is in that element, surround it either before or after or both with the other things in this template. In fact, I have some paragraph marks that I probably don't want in there. We'll save that. And then you can also say this applies to readings, propers, prayers, or anything. So we're just saying this applies to readings. I'll save it, we'll close out of here, and I'll show you what it looks like. So if I go here, down at the very bottom now, oops, maybe not at the very bottom. Let me do a quick refresh. I think that might be the issue. Or it might not be considering the psalm as a reading. That might be part of the liturgy elements. I should have done it for any. We'll give it a chance to refresh. And I've got a lot of questions coming in. All right, daily. Yeah, I think that's what it is because I saved it to the reading. Let's just go up here. This is a reading, first reading with a template. Here we go. Glory be to the Father. There it is. So the preview is content and then glory be to the Father. So let me show you what those options are. The hashtag content hashtag is the most important thing. You have to have that in every template in order to surround things. But then you could do something like the book or the chapter cardinal or chapter ordinal. So if you are wanting to say that this is the reading from 2 Peter, you can have that for the 1, 2, 3, like Easter 1, or in this case, spell out the chapter number from sorry, let me say that again. This is a reading from 2 Peter chapter 1, which is cardinal, the second verse, or I guess that's chapter number as well, or from the second chapter of Peter, something like that. I completely did not explain that verbally very well, so let me show it to you on the screen. I'm stumbling over my words now as I'm seeing just how much we still have to cover. So my worship resources, my templates. This will show it better. So this one is one I've made before, custom template gospel. The Holy Gospel according to book, the chapter ordinal chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Then there's the content. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. So you see, you set this up using the different responses, and then you put your hashtags in there with those different things, and then it'll show up, take it from the reading, and apply it correctly. So we'll go right back into the bulletin format. I'll do this to the gospel, and then we're going to move forward. So here we go. We're already using that one here, actually. So the Holy Gospel according to John, the 10th chapter. And then there's the content. So you see custom template gospel. All right. Whew. There's a lot in my worship resources. There's a lot that I didn't cover in terms of specific cases. And as we get into the question and answer, I'll try to cover as many of those as possible. But I hope that you saw the different tools that are available for you in my worship resources. So let's move on to something a little bit different. We're going to go into Concordia Organist. So we had here the bulletin view. We talked yesterday about the presentation view. There's one more view. It's the playlist view. And let me talk about Concordia Organist for just a second before we actually look at how to use it. Concordia Organist is a subscription service that is an additional fee. We don't have any kind of free license, any kind of trial with this other than that you can preview it, but you can't actually use it. It's $225 a year. That is not a small price tag, but let me tell you what's included in it. It is the recordings, professional recordings for all the hymns in Lutheran Service Book and the liturgy elements that are sung. And it allows you to export these media files, these MP3s, and use them in your service. We call it Concordia Organist because it would serve as a replacement for having an organist playing in your service. Now, we are not trying to kill off the position of organist in the church. We love our organists. They are a key part of our business, so we would never do that. But we know that playing the organ is a skill set that is not as common as it used to be, and that finding an organist every Sunday can be a challenge for many churches. And so you might have to use this. Now, there's other uses for this beyond just playing in service. I think one of the best examples I've heard is that pastors who go on shut-in visits and who are doing a service with the individual can play these hymns, and it takes that person right back into the sanctuary where they're hearing the organ. There's a lot of great things. So when you think about all the different uses, $225 a year isn't bad, but I'm not trying to make a sales pitch. I just want to show how to use this, and we're not going to go into it in too much detail. But you can see here, let's go and, well, we'll just leave it right there. This is my playlist view and the service that I have set up. And I can still set up a service just like everything else. So if I want to use a different hymn, one that we have the music for, I can click on that. I can preview the melody, and let me turn up my volume a little bit so you can hear this. All right, this preview is the melody. That is a MIDI file. That is different than Concordia Organist. Concordia Organist, you can preview by hitting this play button here. That's what Concordia Organist is. Some people get confused and be like, why would I play a MIDI file? That's not very good. No. Concordia Organist is professionally recorded. It was recorded in the chapel at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne by some very talented organists. There's also all of the service music. Then, so you see here, this is the preview. Now, anything that has that little play button is included in it. So again, it has to be music from Lutheran Service Builder. These are recordings. This is not digitally done, automatically generated. So the hymn that I just put in, it's not like reading the melody and playing it that way. These are actually recorded, every single instance. They've been uploaded in here. What you can then do is under Document, go and export a zip file containing all of the individual files that are in there. So I'm going to do that. It takes a few seconds depending on how many hymns you have, how many stanzas. There can be a number of different files that are included in that. But if you're doing something with a hymn that has multiple stanzas, it will give you every single one of those stanzas. You don't have to think about it. Like, how many times do I play this file? Well, we're doing 3 stanzas, so I got to remember to do it 3 times. No, it takes care of all of that for you. Puts it in a zip file, and that's coming up down here. We'll just hide all of my stuff. So you can see here all of these different files. So there's Kyrie 1, Kyrie 2, Kyrie 3. Then here's the hymns that are compiled. So you're not actually having to go stanza by stanza. It has compiled it into that full hymn with the appropriate number of stanzas with a short introduction. And now you can play these during your service. Now, I had a question beforehand. Are you going to show how to burn it to a CD? No. I don't have a CD player on my computer anymore. Many of you probably don't either. With Lutheran Service Builder 2, that was the only way to get the music out, was to burn it to a CD. Well, we know that CD-ROMs are just not common anymore. Most computers don't even have a CD player to burn to. You have to buy an external CD burner. You can still do that with this. You can copy these, move them over to a CD, burn it. It works just like before. There's a little bit more manual effort. But if you're doing this, from a computer or from a phone, where you just plug your phone into the speakers, we give you all of the files, we put it into a playlist so it's really easy to play forward. So that's all I'm going to do on Concordia Organist right now, because it doesn't apply to most of you. We only have about 10% of our customers that need it, but there's a lot of uses for it. So I encourage you to consider it, and I'm going to leave it there. Now, let's talk about creative worship. Many people have said, well, what is creative worship? Again, this is going to sound a little bit like a sales pitch, but I've referenced it so many times that I need to show you what it is. So creative worship started out as just a big book of suggestions for your worship service. And it evolved digitally to being on floppy disks and then CD-ROMs. And now we've got it digitally available for download. And now it's in Builder. So it's really changed over the years. This has been going on since the late 80s, and has continued on. So this is our site. We still show the CD-ROM. That is available. But essentially it is going through the church year, the 3-year lectionary, and creating customized elements, whether it's services, music, images, and then there's the digital paraments that I showed yesterday, and other music suggestions. There is a fee for it. It's $60 a quarter. If you need the disc, it's $75 a quarter, but the online subscription is $60 a quarter. Now, if you just go to, if you are already subscribed, then you would go to creativeworship.online to log in. And I'll just briefly show you what it looks like normally. So you've got your different quarters. We're going to go down to Easter 3. Here we go. This is what we've been working on, third Sunday of Easter. What you have in our normal creative worship is you've got a service outline. I'll show you what that looks like. It looks like this, where you've got different options throughout, suggestions for hymns. You've got different, not all of the worship elements or liturgical elements are different each time, but they're often contextualized for the message. Basically a fully planned service with options for you. Then you have art that goes with it. Custom artwork for the individual readings or digital paraments for the season in the church year. And so we can look at this one here. This would be a great title slide to add to your presentation. Oops, it's down on my other screen. Something like that. All right, all of that is there. How does Builder fit into this? Well, we used to allow you to download LSBX files. This is the last quarter we're doing this because a year ago, we allowed you to turn on your Creative Worship subscription in Lutheran Service Builder. And the way you do that is you go up to Settings, and you go to Account Settings. Give it a second. There we go. Under Content Subscriptions, you can go and add subscription Creative Worship. And you can say include it in search or not include it in search. That's your call. All right, we're going to save that. So during the rest of the week, I had it included in search. I turned it off before this session so I could show you how to activate it. Now I'm going to go back here to my calendar. And I'm going to go back to, oops, I guess I had it open. Add a new service. We're going to call this third Sunday of Easter CW for Creative Worship. Plan this service. I'm going to go into my order of service. And what you'll see right at the top here, Creative Worship Series A, Quarter 2, 2020, third Sunday of Easter. I'll select that order of service. And remember, this is right where I go for my custom order of service. So that's all this is it's a custom order of service created by our team that does creative worship and puts it in there. And we have a lot of external authors who are doing this. So it's not just internal CPH people. We're going out to pastors in the parish and they're creating these for us. And then I'll go under Prepare Bulletin. So let's take a look at this order of service. What you'll see here is we've got a lot of option groups. Remember, I told you before, you have a pre-planned service with options. So here you have the different themes, Easter imperatives, tell, or the stranger savior. That's a mouthful. Then you have different introductions, the as we gather, depending on which one you're using. You've got your hymn. You've got options for your hymn. And in addition to using hymns from LSB, you'll have custom hymns that are prepared just for this service. By your purchase or subscription to Creative Worship, you have the right to use them in your service. So all of that's covered. And the melodies are included with it. Some more. So even more option groups there if you want to sing the Kyrie. So there's a lot that's included. I'll caution you, not everything that is on the digital site is included this. The images and stuff are still not part of it. You'll have to bring those in externally. We're looking at ways to include that. There's just so much stuff. We don't want to overburden you with all sorts of digital files. But in terms of the worship elements, that is all included for you to use. And then if you like something, you can go and still see it in the search. And so it would be another thing that you can find. The custom hymns that are in there, you can find those later on. Now, there are copyrights associated with it if if you're still subscribed to it, but the date has expired, you'll want to check on those. We will prompt you if it's no longer applicable. So just be aware that it might come up that you don't have the rights to use it anymore. Some of our rights with these musics, we license them for the period of time for creative worship, but it's going to let you know about that. So you don't have to go digging. So if it lets you export it, you're good to go. So you're basically adding a bunch of content into creative worship. And it's for all of the quarters that you've subscribed to since we started doing this a little over a year ago. So you're not going to get the one from the early 80s, but anything that we've produced now, we've brought into Builder. So that's Creative Worship. If you want to subscribe to that, that is an additional $60 a quarter. Go to music.cph.org/creative worship. But there's another thing that's free that works in a very similar fashion. We've talked about that before. It's called Let Us Pray. If you go back up into settings and go to account settings, content subscriptions, add subscription, Let Us Pray. You all can do this right now. This is a free subscription. This is the prayers of the church that is published by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and shared with all of our churches. We take it, bring it into Builder, make it a subscription. Let Us Pray. You can include it into search, or you can just say, I'm going to use it every week, so go ahead and put it in my service. Include automatically and click Save. So now, as you are preparing your services, we'll let that save. Now, this is not going to include it automatically. It doesn't update services you've already done. This prayer of the church came from Creative Worship. But I can go here, you see Let Us Pray. Actually, that prayer of the church came from the Service Book. It was assigned by Creative Worship. But here, Let Us Pray is in my search. It's for this specific date in the church year. Now, we had some questions about this. Can you modify it? Well, this goes back to the first part of our presentation. Now that you have the prayer of the church, you can right-click, Edit. It's going to copy it to My Worship Resources and allow you to edit it. So like here, this says, Bless Matthew, presiding in our synod. And then we could say, Lee, our district president. We can put our circuit visitor, our pastor, all of that. You know, however you want to modify it, you can modify it and then click Save. Now it's going to take it back into your service. Now it has saved that under your prayer of the church. See, there it is right there, Lee, our district president. And there's others that I can do. But I've been able to modify it. So we're taking a couple different things here. We're bringing content in from the outside. We're modifying it, making it our own. It's being saved so that we can reuse it again. So I know I'm going through that quickly. I figure there might be some questions. I'm already past my time, and I've got at least one more thing to show. So I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, and I see a lot of them are coming through, although Dan's doing a great job of keeping up. So go, Dan, keep going. Let's say you have gone through and you've created something that you're proud of. It's very helpful to you. You want to share it with other people. How do you do that? Well, let's go back into My Worship Resources. We're going to go to My Common Elements. Let's go to that responsorial that we had before. Psalm 23 responsive. I'm going to switch that from vicar to pastor. I'm going to save that. You say this could be very helpful to people. In fact, you're talking to the church down the street and they're like, oh, I wish I could do that. Well, you can, but I'll save you the work. Why don't I share it with you? I can go up under Common Element here in the top right corner. You see this little button there. I can copy to share this common element. It creates a unique URL. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go into the chat here. If my screen will work right. And I'm going to share this with all of you. There you go. I want you guys to click on it. Don't worry, you saw me do it. It's not a virus. I'm going to paste it up here too. What it does is it takes me to a preview screen and says, this is what is being shared with you. It has the exact name. You can see there's a melody in there. I started a melody, but I didn't include it. And then for you guys, it'll allow you to import it. Now this tells me this resource comes from your library. Share this page with others to allow them to import into their library. You'll be able to import it into yours. Now, I'll caution you, this can be great. It can be just fine, but it's gonna add to your library. And so as you are editing elements, as you are sharing them, getting them from others, it's gonna add to your library. That's where your categorization comes into play. So just make sure you're aware of that. I don't want you to be surprised and be like, oh no, we have 100 things under our common elements, or maybe many more. When we were building the online version, about 1,000 of you shared your databases with us, which was just fantastic. And we got to have a really good understanding of how people are using Builder, and some people had tons of My Worship resources. That's just fine. It doesn't bother us at all. You can have as many as you want. The only time it becomes a problem is if you're trying to find something and you have to sift through all of it. So I'd encourage you to categorize it to the best of your abilities, but there's no problem in having lots and lots of resources. So as you are coming through this, you can put all of these different things together. You can create custom elements, you can share them with other people. This also allows us to share things with you. So if you're looking at our Lent or Advent resources and you find Builder links, that'll take it into here. Now, in addition to like elements, what you can do is if you plan a service, we're going to go back here to our calendar view. I guess I could have just gone straight to the calendar plan. Let's go to this one here. I can share this service with people by going right up here to the same icon. In fact, I'll share it with you just so you can have it and see how that works. I can go under My Worship Resources, My Liturgies. And if you want to bring this in to see what I have, I can click on here. I go over here to Liturgy. Creates another custom link. I can share this with you too. You don't feel obligated to bring those all in. You're welcome to it. In addition to the information that's there, it carries over the copyrights, but it doesn't carry over the licenses. So if you want to share something with a custom hymn, you have the license in there so people can only use it if they've got the right licenses. So it covers all of that. So you don't have to worry about, well, this is copyrighted. I don't want to share this with somebody because they might print it and they aren't allowed to. Well, it's going to put that same copyright message up for them and say, do you really have the rights to do this? And so then it's on them. And please follow copyrights. Our business here revolves around copyrights. You don't want to put us out of business by breaking copyright laws. And there's that whole commandment issue that we've got of thou shalt not steal. So, all right. I think I covered my outline. I'm well past the 90, well, I'm at 98 minutes. What questions do you have? Let me jump in here real quick before I go too far. Software support is always available for your questions. We've got our online help center, our in-app chat, our support team email address, or our phone number. These guys are excellent. I hope you see that as you're getting the questions as you're getting the answers to your questions from Dan. But we've got a team of people who work with Dan that are happy to help you. So I encourage you to take advantage of them. That's part of your subscription. Get the help you need. Don't sit on these questions forever and ever because you might be able to save yourself a lot of time by getting that answer sooner. All right. Let's get into Q&A. Type your questions in the chat if you haven't already. I will be sharing the recording. Please don't ask me how to get a recording of this. I will email you. That is my #1 question I get. And if you are watching the recording after the fact, thank you very much for doing that. You can email your questions to support@cts.cph.org or go to the help center or go to the chat. Just some way of getting it. You just can't chat live like everybody who's here right now. All right, I'm going to take a breather. Think about what I covered. What kind of things do you want to have answered? And I'm going to start going through. I'm going to go through the questions that don't have answers from Dan right now. And then we'll get back to some of the other ones. Oh. Apparently doesn't like using that down button. Well, thank you everybody for these questions. There's a lot of good stuff. I said, this is so cool. Thank you, Marcia. All right. These are some of the ones I answered before. I'm going to keep going. All right, so LSB has gone to the trouble of composing a different prayer of thanksgiving for every season, if not every Sunday of the church year. It would be nice to be able to import that variety into settings 1 and 2. I don't know enough about those details to be able to pull it up on the screen. That's from Jonathan. But I think, I'm not sure if you're saying that it's not in Lutheran Service Builder or if you just can't do it in settings 1 and 2. I'm not sure that specific content. It should be in Lutheran Service Builder from the sound of it. But if it is in Lutheran Service Builder, you can absolutely bring it into settings 1 and 2, and you can save it as a custom service. Sorry, Jonathan, I can't answer that fully right now. I just don't know enough about that content to say for sure. All right, Tony said, I'd like to have a custom responsorial that is a music note to indicate a sung response. Tony, I answered that before, but I do want to just show you where I did that because this is a common question that we get. Let me show you based on, I'm going to go change this to Divine Service setting 3, override what's there. And I'm going to go, let's see, what would be, what I want to do is show you how you can, oh, that's not a good one. What am I looking? I'm getting tired. I apologize. Trying to think of a good one that has melody already. Let me go down to the, that is a much better solution. It's not at the beginning. So there we go. There is a response. You also have the text and the music. That was a common thing that we asked for, where the pastor says it and the congregation sings it. You can take this element and go and edit it, which will copy it to your My Worship resources, and just see how they've got this set up. So you'll notice it goes straight to the text. That's because these tabs up here show all of the different varieties that you have. In this case, each one of these is a piece of music. In this case, each one of these has each one of the responses has the setting. The text and setting is different. Then we have the text and just the melody. So you have these different options there, and you can add more of your own. So this is, let me phrase this a different way. We give you the tools to do everything that we do. Didn't used to be that way in Builder 2, but I don't think there's anything that we can do now that you can't do to set up in Builder. It's just a matter of knowing how. And so hopefully you saw that before, but I wanted to show you that kind of end result. And yeah, it's just the possibilities are endless with what you can do with this. All right, I'm gonna keep going down here. Let's talk briefly, because I didn't do this yet, about the LSB font. I'm not gonna show it to you because it's a one-time thing and we notify you when it happens, but I'm just gonna talk about it. These symbols that show up next to text, if it's in the music, it's part of the image, but if it shows up next to text, these symbols are just a font that is applied in your bulletin. And it's a font that you need installed on your computer. But the first time you go to download from Lutheran Service Builder, if you don't have that font installed, it's going to tell you, hey, I don't see that font. Here's the link. You download it. If you're, I'm not sure how to do it on a Mac. I'm not familiar with Macs. I think that's where the question is. I haven't downloaded it yet. Let's see, I have downloaded it. Pardon me, I misspoke. John is saying I have downloaded it. That would be a support question. But for everybody else who hasn't downloaded it, install it on your computer. If your admin settings don't let you do it, you can talk with your network administrator, but do it once. That's what that's there for. And again, this notifies you if it's an issue. If you haven't noticed it, if you don't see any issues with the font, then you're probably all set. If you came from LSB2, you'd be in good shape. So John and Dan responded in the same way. Your situation sounds unique. It'd be best to talk to support. All right, Susan is asking for a responsorial for all first bond. And if you go in here, what you could do is add a custom, though I don't think we have the dark A. That's the difference. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you very much for that, Susan. All right. I think, John, I think you've got your answer followed up. That's the one problem, is that these come in chronologically. So if you did have a follow-up to something I'm reading, I haven't necessarily seen it. All right, that gets into a bit more details than I can say right now. So Jonathan, I think that's probably a better question for support, but I'll take a look at that afterwards. You've got a number of questions there. I'll be able to piece it all together better. So does it matter if Patricia's asking, does it matter if the music image is PNG or JPEG? No, it doesn't. You can use either one. Check out the quality. Usually PNG is a little bit higher quality, maybe a higher file size, but either one should be just fine. If you're going really high level, like we do, we use TIFF and it converts it as it's needed. But yeah, it's your call. Oh, good. And Jonathan, I think Dan got back to you later on. So I think Dan's got us covered. Let's see. Man, Dan, you did a great job of answering all of these. All right, Dawn is asking this question. Is there a way to insert the date and what Sunday it is? That is a very good question and something that you cannot do right now, and I apologize for that. But I like that idea, and we've talked about that as a development team. I'm going to bring that up again. One of the things that what Builder is not designed to do is to put in all of the details of your bulletin. It's supposed to be your order of service. And this falls on that line of what is really news and announcements and order of service. I think it falls more on the line of the order of service. It's not something that you say or do, but it is tied to the church year. And so I think there's a lot of relevance with that. The reason we haven't added that in is that it's a kind of an entirely new model. It would be something along the lines of those hashtags within a header. And that's within the realm of possibility and what we're going to be talking about. And so I appreciate the suggestion. I think there's a need for it. Our developers have talked about the value of doing it. Now it's just a matter of prioritizing it, getting into the development cycle. We're continually adding new things. So I think that'll be out there at some point in the future. It's just not there right now. All right. Let's see, what other questions? Before I come back to questions that Dan has answered. Dan, I think this, or sorry, not Dan, Russell is asking a question. Basically, it looks like there's no liturgy showing up. He'd moved online in LSB2, there's liturgy. And I had an email that was very similar related to only hymns showing up. If you're having that issue, I would guess that the issue is your bulletin or in the email of your presentation formats. I want to do a quick review of that because if multiple people are having that, there might be some people who haven't said anything that are having the same issue. But if you go under bulletin or presentation formats, either one, it operates the same way. And you're not seeing something that you should be seeing. Under content, you have these visible checkboxes. This goes to what I was talking about the other day with like having a, well, here's an outline view. If you wanted to have certain things showing in your export that are, if you want to hide certain things in your export that are part of your service. There you go. If you want to hide things in your export that are part of your service because of the intended audience, the intended user. So for example, your organist doesn't necessarily need to have the checklist of every aspect of the liturgy, but he or she needs to know what hymns are on there. Now, most likely they'll probably have the full service so they can follow along. But if you're just wanting to prepare a few things, you might do an outline view like this. That's by turning content on or off, whether it's visible or not visible. So from a troubleshooting perspective, if you are not seeing certain elements that you know should be there, well, they're probably turned off in your formats. So go take a look there. That, if it's not that, if it's something else, it could be a number of other things that could have been deleted from your order of service. I don't know. Our support team would be happy to help you kind of troubleshoot that. All right. Let's see. There's some questions about a custom hymn. All right, let's jump down into some of these others. John is asking the question, this has been a great series. How long will the recordings be available? They'll be available until I make another series. We keep them in our resource center, probably far too long. I've got some old ones out there that I need to remove, but these will be out there for a long time. All right, next, Patricia is asking, I have a music engraving done for 8.5 width. However, with web view, the portrait view on phone auto converts to text, but landscape just cuts off the music. What size engraving would work both on phone and in print? Can the web view always convert to text to avoid the music cutoff issue? All right, so Patricia, that web view is brand new, and you presented some of the problems that we ran into. So what I would recommend doing, so let me get your question straight first. What size engraving would work on both phone and in print? I'm not sure exactly, and part of that's because phone varies quite a bit. What I can say, oh man, I should have stayed where I was. Under bulletin formats, there is, let's go here. Under layout, you have this automatically scale. Let me show the music of the hymn. So the automatically scale goes to the full width. Now that said, I believe with WebView, and I can't say for sure because it's brand new, but I believe with WebView, we automatically default to text. I think that's what you're saying. But on landscape, just cuts off the music. We're gonna be looking at that for some optimization. Most melody lines are way too long to show on the phone. It shrinks the text down too long. But I think what we've probably found is something that we haven't optimized is that at the web view for the landscape mode, it's just not doing what it's supposed to do. And you want it to always cut to text so that the music doesn't cut off. So I think what I'll do is I'll talk with our developers and just say, let's extend where it automatically converts to text to be a little bit wider. There might be some other ways of doing it, but what you found is just a bug with our brand new view. So thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. I had to process that for a second. All right, Shannon, you haven't, actually, Shannon hasn't received the emails with the text. Could be a number, or with the recordings. There could be a number of reasons why you didn't. It's possible that it's going to your junk mail. It's possible that you are opted out of our emails, even though you signed up for the webinars. What I'm gonna do, and I should have done this every week, is I'm gonna put in the link to our resource center. So regardless of whether you get the emails or not, the emails just go to our resource center. So go to this link. This is part of Concordia Technology Solutions. This is where our software team is tied into. It's still part of CPH, but our resource center has them. So here's the one from yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. You can go in, watch these. They'll be available for a long period of time, but that way you always know how to get to them. So once we're done here, the recording will process. I'll upload it to this site, and you'll be able to access it. And then I'll send the link that directs you to this site, but this will go to the category. So you've got that available now. So Shannon, I hope you're still listening. It looks like it, but I also just send it to you individually too. All right, next up. Brian's already left, but he said, when I prepare a folded bulletin, does Builder have the option to paginate the folded bulletin? No, it doesn't right now. That is a Word setting. And so you'd have to turn that on into Word, but I think you should be able to set up a template within Word that automatically does that. But it does like break it into pages when it exports, but we can't set the page numbers right now. All right. Michelle's saying, can Creative Worship Online be purchased without Lutheran Service Builder? Yes, it can. So going back to, let's see. If you go to music.cph.org/creative-worship, you can go and subscribe at this link that's going to show up right there, right on the right side. So you subscribe it, you'll get access to all of the elements. If it'll go to that web view with all the graphics and everything else. So I highly encourage you to do it. There are so many fantastic resources in there, and they're all tied into that day in the church year, and they're custom for that day too. A lot of work goes into it. We contract pastors and other people throughout our synod to write for us. Really fantastic stuff. All right, Linda's saying, with Creative Worship, if we have been paying for each quarter, does that mean we are set for using with LSB? Possibly. If you are buying them individually, you are not set, but that's where you would subscribe. If you're buying them individually, they're $75 each time. But if you subscribe, you pay $60 every quarter and you get access in Lutheran Service Builder. So that's what it should be. If you have questions about that, reach out to me directly or to our team here at CPH. We'll figure out what you've got right now and we'll help you get on track with the subscription. All right. Jonathan added a comment on there. He's already left. He points out something that I got to remember. He says, you do realize that Lutheran Service Builder is vastly more complex and difficult to use than any other software a church worker or volunteer would normally use. It's all most churches can do to find people who can handle an office suite, not something as difficult as Lutheran Service Builder. I get it. It is complex because service planning is complex, but hopefully we've made it as easy to use as possible. But that's why we host webinars like this. I mean, it's taken me about 8 hours to explain how to use that. I can show you how to use Microsoft Word in, half an hour, maybe a little less. So yes, it's definitely vastly more difficult. But for people who are committed to serving in the church and for people who get in the habit of it, we hope that it's an easy tool to use. And if not, that's why we have a support team. We're happy to help you out with it. All right. Is there a way to print or save all these questions? The answers would be good. So nice to be able to save them for future reference. Marcia is asking, well, not easily. And that's kind of why I'm answering them as we go. I'm going to try to go back up in just a minute to answer some of the other questions that Dan's already answered. So I'm sorry, there's not a good way to do that. So we had delete formats or other things you've customized so you don't have so much? Yeah, John, that's a great question. I should have shown that before. If really anytime you see this thing on the side, either bulletin formats, presentation formats, or my worship resources, on the lower left-hand side, there should be a delete button. So if I go back into my close out of formats, give me just a second and I'll go into my worship resources. I'm going to go to my liturgies. I've got a lot of liturgies in there. Here we go. And this actually points out something else. We don't require the names to be unique, and that's a problem. We're going to look at addressing that. So you see here, I have two My Divine Service settings ones. We should really force you to name them something different so that you don't get confused by them. But you have the option to. And then here you have remove this liturgy. So I can go in and delete it, reminder it can't be undone, and delete it. And that one's gone. That was the one from a previous webinar. So yep, you'll always be able to remove them. All right. Okay, Tony just sent me an email to explain what I'm asking for with the responsorial. And I think, okay, I'll double check my email. But I think what you're saying based on that is you're looking for like a music icon or something along those lines. So I'll take a look at your email, Tony, and get back to you. All right, we're doing the free LSB right now. If we decide to continue on pay, will what we have done be saved over to your subscription? Michael, absolutely. We can convert your subscription to a paid version. And in fact, when we turn off the free license, we're not deleting your accounts. We are just gonna turn off the ability to export. And we're not doing that yet. I've had a number of questions. I talked with our copyrights team the other day to say, when do we wanna do that? Well, with all of the different states doing different timeframes for sheltering in place, we're gonna play it by ear. We'll give you some notifications so that you have a chance to upgrade your subscription and not have any kind of delay in waiting for that. So it's still unknown right now. I would guess that it's gonna be end of May, end of June. We'll just see how our world gets back up and running. But you won't lose anything regardless. Even if you don't pay right away, you'll still have access to it. You just won't be able to export. So if you're on that free plan right now, great, you won't lose anything. If you're paying, nothing will change for you. You can continue to do what you're doing. Does your resource page include FAQs? This is where our online help center is so helpful. If you go down here to the I button, lower right-hand corner, oops, you can always visit the online help center. You can search for it, search for any articles around liturgy. If you click on the link, it'll take you to the entire collection, all sorts of stuff in there. So please feel free to look around, see what's there. There's a community where you can share thoughts and ask questions. There's a bunch of stuff there. So I encourage you to go take a look. All right, couple more questions as we're wrapping up here. So if we subscribe to Creative Worship for $60 a quarter, are the services able to be exported to the web? Yes, absolutely. That's what I was showing before. So if you subscribe, you can have that. I tried to copy and paste starting with the first audience question and then paste it to our ordered file, and that seemed to work. Yippee, Marcia, that's great until I turn off the webinar. So most of your questions are going to be answered in that online help center, maybe not specifically, but I'll be asking questions for a few more minutes. So go ahead, copy paste whatever you want, but when I do end the webinar and I can't keep it going all day, you won't be able to do that anymore. All right. Is there a way to remove a group? In other words, remove introit and entrance hymn as well as one of the choices with psalm? All right. That's a really good question, Floyd. I appreciate you asking that. Let me go here. Let me close out of this. That is a question I don't know off the top of my head. So we're going to play around with it and see. I think that by deleting just one element, yep, there it goes. And now if I go in here, I can pull this out of my option group and then just delete that. Yeah. Now, if I wanted to insert an option group, it just kind of inserts it there. There's nothing underneath it yet. If I wanted to move I just drag and drop it underneath it. Yeah, there you go. I don't do too much with option groups, but you can pull it out, you can delete it. Basically anything that's under it will be part of that option group. So yeah, you've got both options. And then the other thing you have is a group, which is just, so an option group lets you pick one of those things. A group says this all goes together, kind of like the service of sacrament. So if we go here, this is just all included together. So I hope that helps. It's pretty intuitive. I thought that's how it worked. It's been a while since I touched on that. All right. Well, we are after 12 o'clock. So I'm going to give a couple more questions for answers. I don't want to go too much farther. Thank you for all those of you who have stuck with us to the bitter end. There's it just shows that you're very interested in learning, and I appreciate that. This next question, we have LSB2, organist, and hymn license. How do we convert to the online version and do costs change, or will our time to renew just change from what we have now? Costs don't change, it's just your time to renew. Depending on how your licenses are aligned, one of the things we do with the online version is we make sure that all three of those start at the same time. So if you signed up in different months, you'll have different start and end dates. We're going to say, all right, let's bring them all together. On this one, you still owe this amount, so we're going to credit you, or you have this many days left, so we're going to credit you that month. On this one, we're going to move it forward, so we may charge you. There will be some prorated fees and credits if you have different dates. But if your dates are all the same, the fees are all the same. There's no additional charge per year. So your out-of-pocket expenses will always be the same. But depending on how your licenses start and end, you might have some shifts with that. So I hope that's helpful. The next step, and I should probably put that up, is you can reach out. If we go to LutheranServiceBuilder.com, takes you to music.LutheranServiceBuilder. If you go to contact, you can go down here and call you can call this number, you can email this team, they'll help you get set up and running with it. So it's our software consultants, they handle all of our sales. They'll be able to convert your account over and you'll be good to go. So I hope that's helpful. I think I'm going to go ahead. Dan's done such a good job of answering those other questions. I'm not going to rehash them. So I'm going to wrap up here and just tell you, thank you very much for watching. This has been a fun week. I enjoy doing these webinars. I've got a lot of webinars coming up. Next week, I'll be leading on Church 360 members. I'm starting a church communications training course that'll be going for about 7 weeks, once a week. I enjoy webinars, and it's because I get to interact with you. Even though I'm not talking back and forth with you, having your questions in, hearing your responses, the back and forth afterwards is wonderful. So I thank you very much for being here. I hope this was valuable to you. The Lutheran Service Builder is such a great tool, and I really love seeing people get excited and use it in different ways. Special thanks to Dan for being here and answering those questions. That is a huge help to me and to our audience, so I appreciate you being here to do that. All right, thanks so much. Have a great day. You'll get the recording soon. Thank you so much.